Now we're going to put the front together, and in order to do that we're going to attach our flutter sleeves first to the front upper piece, and we're doing it exactly where it shows you on your pattern piece to put your flutter sleeve. So I'm putting the inner edge of my flutter sleeve on that first snip mark I've got in there, and then I'm using some pins vertical to the seam so that I don't need to take them out while I'm sewing, and I secure my flutter sleeve. I'll do the same on the other side, and then I can attach the lower part of the front, and I've marked which is the upper part of it because they're not exactly the same top and bottom, so you need to make sure that you put the right one to the upper part. And I'm going to pin this against first in the center and then on either side, and then I'm going to pin the rest of it on. There we go. So it looks really nice. What a lovely contrast that is. And we're going to sew it together with a centimeter seam allowance. Make sure that everything is nice and flat underneath, always very important. All the way around. Don't forget to lock in your stitches at the beginning and at the end. And now I pop on over and I will iron this so that we get a really nice smooth line before I'm going to top stitch it. And I don't know if you can see it already, but there is a little kink in there, and I'm thinking, oh, can I get rid of it? Can I iron it away? And I found that I couldn't. So I checked it and I saw that I actually sewed a kink into it. So I went back to the sewing machine, and it's very easy now to go slightly too low in an effort to counteract what you've already done. So when you have this kind of problem, make sure that you take the exact seam allowance when you're sewing over it again, and that will keep you nice and straight. So now I fixed it and pick the bit which was wrong, iron over it, and look how lovely and smooth it is now. Sometimes it's just worth doing that. Next I'm going to top stitch it, and we want a rather large stitch length. 3.5 is what I use on my puff, but maybe you need to use a different stitch length, maybe even longer than 3.5. And you also need to work with the markings on your presser foot. I know I say this every time, but the presser feet that have a clear plastic center and little dots on them, so you can mark where you want to do top stitching, they are really fantastic. They're much better than the solid metal ones. Don't forget to secure your stitches at the end. You could also stitch from the other side. Right-handed people on a wall prefer to use the markings on the right-hand side of the presser foot rather than the left. And here you can see the distance that I'm taking to sew this, so I'm not too close to the edge. Next we're going to put the lining over the top. I want you to just stick these down so they're not in the way, and we're placing the lining over the top. And then I'm just going to pin this real quick, and we're going to stitch from one armhole to the other all the way around. I'm going to show you in a minute that I'm also going to put stay tape over the top, or I didn't have stay tape, I may do. But if you find your fabric stretches a lot in the area of the underarm, because that is actually where the fabric is on the diagonal, then you should maybe put that on now at this point. You'll see in a minute exactly what I mean. Take your stitch length down as you go into this corner, and then extend it again once you're around the corner, and that will make sure that nothing frays out or rips out or whatever. I always do that as a habit. It might not even happen here, but it's a good habit to get into. Make sure that the needle is down in the fabric when you turn. And there we go. I put the stitch length back up and push the fabric in so that you're not pulling it as you do this. Next, we're going to stick in our little flutter sleeves because we also need to close the lower edge. Of course, you can do it all in one, but sometimes I like to go step by step. Oh, look, I've cut into this, but I've just got enough seam allowance there to hide it, which is lucky. And I need to leave a turning gap in here for later. So I'm leaving the turning gap not in the center. I'm leaving it slightly over to the left side here because then it's easier to get a nice round finish with it when you're done. There you see my turning gap. Not too big, and we're going to quickly stitch that in as well. From here to there and from there to there. Secure your stitch when you get to your turning gap. Just lift it over and then go back down the other side. Lock in your stitches again and keep to that 1 centimeter seam allowance, which is rather important because the back needs to fit exactly into this. So keeping your seam allowance is quite important. If anything, you can go and make the seam allowance a tiny bit bigger than a centimeter, maybe 1.2, so that the back sits in there very snappily. But what you don't want to do is have less. Now I'm going to cut back my seam allowance. You could also snip it and turn it. That's a preference. I like to cut it, and I can already see that this particular fabric really stretches in that area, and I'm thinking, no, I need to put on some stay tape. Only since this is during Corona, everything is shut and there is absolutely no stay tape to be had anywhere. So I just cut a slither of white linen on the straight grain, and I'm just going to put that over the top. And because I can see through what I'd already stitched, I'm just making sure that I go exactly on the stitch line that I had there previously, and that way it will absolutely not stretch, and that's what I want. And I do the same on the other side. There we go, and that's really sturdy now. Look at that, nothing will move, and when we have the pull from the elasticated back, it won't stretch and look unsightly after a while. Now I can turn the whole thing inside out, and then I want to show you real quick how you get a really beautiful corner, and that is not by cutting it back. If you have a proper corner, which is almost a 90-degree angle, what you do is you just fold the seam allowance in from both sides and then turn it. It gives you a beautiful, beautiful edge. Look at that. Let's do that again on the other side. Go in, pull out that corner, and then you turn it in, and you turn it in from the top. Make sure you hold it with your thumb, and then you turn it while you're holding it, and you only let go when you've pushed it into the corner. Here I need to lift out a little bit with the pin, and there you go. It's beautiful, oh? So that's one way to do it. Now over to the ironing board, where we're going to make sure that all the edges are nicely rolled out and we get a beautiful finish. And now I'm going to give it a press down here as well. And it's not important that we're edge to edge on the hem or the lower end of the little top. It's important that it's nice and flat. So in my case, it stands over a tiny little bit. It doesn't matter if it does that. So now we're ready to work our back. See you there.